Hi, this is John Ruggiero, and this is New Jersey Paranormal. With me today is Brian Cano from Haunted Collector and from Scared. Brian, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, John. It's good to be here.
Let's start at the beginning. You started as a urban explorer slash paranormal investigator. This led to the creation of your paranormal team that you're still part of, Scared. Take me through the evolution process going from Scared in Staten Island, your cable access show, all the way up to Haunted Collector.
Wow, John, I mean, the past 14 years has been this crazy journey that I could never have predicted when we first started now. Back in 2002, we started a cable access show on Staten Island called, appropriately enough, Scared on Staten Island. And for me to say that it was a paranormal investigation show would be giving it too much credit. It was urban exploration. Essentially, it was just myself and 4 or 5 of my friends going into abandoned buildings trying to ascertain if any of the wild, crazy stories and all the urban legends were true. Now, in Staten Island, you have a lot of abandoned buildings. And as abandoned buildings do, nature takes over, the rumors start. Mm-hmm. Ghosts, murders, Satanists, all that crazy stuff. And we figured, you know what? If these places are as haunted as everyone says they are, we should be able to go in with ourselves, a couple of cameras and our wits, and come out with something, right? So that was the genesis of my paranormal career, I guess. It was very Blair Witch, very shaky cam. If I were to show you some of the old tapes, you would need a Dramamine.
So this led to the creation of documentaries. Mm-hmm. How, again, did you go from urban exploration to the documentaries to then becoming part of the Haunted Collector?
Well, you know what it was? My friends and I were always filmmakers. We loved to do comedies and skits, and we just always loved doing things with film. And this was actually intended just to be another project. We figured we'd do 6 episodes, and after that, we would go on to something else. Now, the first 5 episodes were actual, true documentaries. All the places we went in with our cameras, and we figured, all right, let's see what we can get. Now, episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 all took place on Staten Island.
Okay.
The 6th episode was going to be our Halloween episode. Now that was a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. That was going to be something else.
Okay.
We called it the Davis Center, and we fabricated a location. We're like, okay, we're going to explore the Davis Center, and we had a history, we had rumors, and it started off just like every other episode. Now, again, this was 2002. There's no ghost hunters.
Right.
There's no ghost adventures. Paranormal programming essentially was Halloween. And whatever specials came out at the time, it culminated with It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and then it was off to Christmas.
Right.
Now, this 6th episode began like all the other ones, but then one by one, the crew members started dying. One by one, one by one. I think Chris and I were the last ones. I was second to last to go, and you'll see this on our press reel. All the different shots. There's one shot of Chris backed against a doorway, screaming as this rubber monster hand reaches out for him. And that was the Blair Witch aspect where it says tape end. And we planned to do nothing for the next year. We were going to disappear so that all our viewers would go,
funny. That's funny.
Oh my God, what happened to them? And then we would come back, and it essentially was our Halloween episode because it was trick or treat.
Okay.
And we loved talking to people about it because we always asked them, at what point did you stop believing? Because each death, like the first couple, crew member Greg gets hurt. He's got a gash on his leg, and we had makeup effects. And then there was a cave-in on Eric. And then, little by little, one of the other members gets knocked out by something in the woods. I disappear, and Chris goes into the last room he saw me in, and there's just like pieces and organs everywhere with blood all over the walls. And then the rubber monster. So at the end, it's all right, you get it. You're with us on the joke, but at what point did you stop believing?
Right. You know what's funny about that is that I always thought a good movie would be sort of the paranormal group that goes into the house, Blair Witchy, and just kind of disappears one by one, like you mentioned. It's funny that you mentioned that. So where does John Zaffis come into the picture, and the origins of Haunted Collector? Where does that come from? How does that start?
Well, because Scared on Staten Island was essentially meant to be a 6-episode side project,
Right.
At the end of it, we got such great feedback. People loved what we were doing. The station itself said, wow, you guys really have something interesting. Don't be surprised if a producer out there watches this and you see something come out like it. And I mean, I'm not going to have the hubris to say, yeah, we started the movement, but
Right.
we were amongst those at the time that were part of a very growing, percolating bunch that were interested in the paranormal. And we figured, you know what? They're enjoying it. We're enjoying it. Let's keep doing it. So we dropped on Staten Island and we just shortened it to Scared. And we started leaving the island, going to different locations. And we really started to become investigators. Now, I always tell people, you cannot be an investigator in the paranormal seriously for an extended amount of time and not run into John Zaffis.
Yeah.
John Zaffis, godfather of the paranormal. I mean, the man, he's... when we met him, it was at a convention. And I knew he was going to be there, and I was very...
So I was when I met him.
Chris, we're going to meet John Zaffis. Oh, we have to make a good impression. Godfather, I mean, especially when you're from New York and someone is called the Godfather,
Right.
you...
take notice.
You
Right.
straighten your back. You
Show some respect.
Godfather, I got something to say. You know, you try to get all your ducks in a row.
Right.
So we pull up to the convention, and it was in Gettysburg. And it was at the Eisenhower Hotel.
Okay.
Now, the Eisenhower has 2 entrances, one on the lower part of the hill, one on the upper part of the hill. So we pull up to the first door, and look inside, and say, oh my God, Chris, there's John Zaffis. Okay, we've got to talk to him. I go inside. They say, oh, no, you got to check in up at the other one. Okay, got in the car, up the hill, get out of the car. There's John Zaffis. And it seemed like as we were going to our room, as we were setting up our booth, as we were doing all our things, everywhere we went, there was John Zaffis. And between Chris and I kept saying, you know, he must have like an army of clones or body doubles or something. So the convention went on. Chris went outside to have a smoke. There was a couple of people gathered. John was amongst them. And Chris, this was one of the first nights of the convention, so we were all feeling a little good, having a casual evening. And Chris goes to John. He goes, "Hey, Zaffis, how many of you are there?" John, he's classic, takes it in stride. He goes, well, what are you talking about? He says, because every time we see you, we go somewhere else, and like Jason in Friday the 13th, you end up in front of us somehow. And he goes, what? I'm with Jason Hawes in the woods? He said, no, I didn't say that. He goes, wait, you had a dream about me and Jason Hawes in the woods? We were naked?
Totally missed the boat.
Whoa, when did this become part of it? No, hey!
Some impression you're making there.
And John, you know, he took it very seriously, very straight-faced, and that's how he gets you. And then he started to crack a smile.
Right.
And from that point on, it was us and John. And that next year, we produced a documentary for him called John Zaffis, The World Within.
Okay.
And it was a month in the life of a demonologist. It was his story. So this was the direct precursor to Haunted Collector.
Right.
So you've got his kids in it, Chris and Amy. You've got Beth Ezzo, who's in it also. We're in it. And it details everything he's done, from his collection of haunted items to his work in demonology to his home group of Presney. And we had the greatest time filming it.
Oh, wow. What was the name of that?
John Zaffis, The World Within.
Okay. Your interest in the paranormal, let's go back. Did it start from an experience that you had? A lot of people start that way, or was it just a general interest, something you were always curious about?
You know, I feel like my journey over the past 14 years has been a very sine wave type looking one, because when I started out, when I was a kid, as many of us, I believed in everything.
Right.
I used to watch In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy, and every week I would be fascinated with what I saw, and I would think, I'm gonna grow up. I'm gonna find it out. I'm gonna solve. I'm gonna go to Stonehenge. Yeah. I'm gonna find the Loch Ness monster. And like we all did, where our heads are filled with dreams. Right. And as you get older, you know, what do you start off with? Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy, Jesus, or whatever. Insert your deity here. And one by one,
Yep.
if you get older, you start losing those things. And for the longest time, I found myself a skeptic. Hardcore.
That's what I was going to ask you. Were you always a believer, or were you?
No, I mean, I originally believed in it. When I was a kid, I was that kid who was too afraid to do the Bloody Mary challenge in the mirror.
So was I.
Just in case.
Yep.
I was raised Catholic, so I have all those stories and teachings inside me, and I wasn't going to mess with that. Because, back then, like now, the paranormal, you're a rock star. You go into town and you say, hey, I've got a paranormal group. People are like, wow.
I got a black T-shirt and
black T-shirt.
Somebody,
You upgrade to the jacket eventually.
I'm not quite there yet.
But you tell people this, and now it's an opening to conversation. So no longer are you looked at as crazy. You're looked
It's
at
mainstream
as,
now. It's no longer taboo.
I've got an experience. Let me tell you about this.
Right.
And they'll pull out their phone and say, hey, my aunt took this picture. Can you tell me what it's about? But back then, back when we were kids, it was the occult.
Yep.
If you looked into this stuff, it was subversive. It was underground. You didn't talk about it.
What about a Ouija board? Have you ever used one? I never asked you that.
I've used one once.
And?
On the first episode of Scared on Staten Island.
Okay.
And I used it in conjunction with one other person. And I was a skeptic. I'm like, this is stupid. This is not going to work.
I never have.
You're pulling it. Stop it. And I think he was pulling it. So
okay.
I haven't used one since. There's a lot of superstition. There's a lot of fear centered around the Ouija board. But honestly, it's a cardboard.
Do you have that fear of?
No, I don't. Although I will say this, it's the intent.
Right.
It's not the board
I
itself.
agree.
There's nothing imbued. Parker Brothers can't package the
Right,
paranormal.
exactly.
But it's what you do with it. So we could take this DVD and draw on it.
Exactly.
And whatever we do with it, that's the connection. And the difference is, when we're on an investigation, you and I, we use gadgets.
Right.
We use gear. With a Ouija board, you're saying, use my body.
Yep.
And I'm not down with that.
Okay. I know for myself, when I got into this, I, like you, was a bit of a skeptic. I watched the shows. I did the research. It wasn't until that first experience that I started to really believe. What was that first experience like for you that made you go, oh man, maybe this is real. Maybe spirits and ghosts are real?
I feel like I didn't have one experience. For me, it was a lot of little things. And starting from that skeptic standpoint, from then to now I consider myself a skeptical believer.
Okay.
I know the activity exists. I know the phenomenon is real. It's the people who report it that I'm pretty skeptical
Right.
of. Now, from A to B, there wasn't one moment that just turned the lights on and said, oh, bing, I get it now. But
okay.
the way I describe it, it's like each experience is a grain of sand.
Right.
In and of itself, not very life-changing. But enough of those grains of sand, and you look down, hey, I'm standing on a beach.
Right.
This is incomprehensible. And for me, it was a lot of little things. And when you investigate the paranormal, I feel like there's this door. And you're kind of looking through the doorway, looking through the crack, trying to peer inside to that other room.
Right.
And the more you do it, that door opens wider and wider until the door is open and you can't go back to that earlier state of being. So that's why I can never go back. It's only a one way.
Well, I just, like I said, for me, I was actually had a recorder in Gettysburg, and I was walking around asking questions, and just like they do on TV, and I was by myself, and I listened back to the recording, and there were actual answers, and that for me was that wow moment. That's why I was wondering if you ever did have that. I know your urban explorations. Did a door ever just close on you, or did you hear a voice live or something like that?
But at the time, I dismissed it. In recent years, I've gone back to some of those old tapes and old recordings, and we found EVPs.
Okay,
back then, we weren't ready. I wasn't ready to accept it at that point.
Okay.
And because it's an evolution, you have to take it at your own speed. So for me, I want to say it was probably 2009 at a place called the Grand Midway Hotel.
Okay.
That I had the experience that really solidified it for me. And I look back and say, yeah, that was the pivotal moment. That was the culmination of all those grains of sand. And I looked down and realized, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And over the course of my own entire career, I've had these moments of cerebral warheads that just explode in my brain. And like when I first discovered what an EVP was,
right.
I'm just reading and doing research. I'm like, okay, electronic voice phenomenon. Oh, okay, ghostly voices. All right. And then I experienced them. Next, I got to more methods of ITC and real-time communication, and a group called Time Stream, and all these other technicians on the other side and stations. And I'm thinking, oh, come on, this sounds like science fiction.
Yeah, until you experience.
And all these concepts are very much, they operate like the stages of loss. You're presented with it, and then you have to go through the stages. There's denial, there's bargaining, there's, because everyone kind of has a feeling that they get what's going on.
Right.
I know what the world is about, and I'm comfortable with my place in it. And when I take your world and I flip it on its side, all right, it takes a while for you to get that equilibrium, and then eventually you get to that acceptance, and then on to the next mind-shattering moment.
Well, I've always wondered about your theory on what spirits are, and people believe their soul's trapped here for whatever reason, they can't move on, or that the afterlife is another dimension and that spirits could come back and forth through portals. Mm-hmm. What is your opinion on spirits?
That's a big question.
I know it's the question.
We only have half an hour for this?
I'm just curious if you can sort of, in a nutshell, what do you believe?
My current belief, and I have to preface it with that, because again, I consider myself a scientist.
Right.
So to operate in belief, it's a hard thing. Now, semantically, okay, we're all dealing in belief. Whether you're one of those love and lighters who just, I believe, I see, you got a lot of the psychic end who they just feel and believe, and that's all that's required. Right. And then there's those who require the proof. You're scientists, you're skeptics who need empirical data. Whichever camp you're in, you're operating on belief, either in a higher power or in the figures and facts that essentially the guys in the lab coats and the scientists and the philosophers are telling us. And again, I've never researched, I've never measured that when the seasons change and the water turns into ice, that yes, it is 0 degrees Celsius. But I take it on faith that, they figured that out, they know what they're doing. So what is the afterlife? What is that beyond? As I've come to understand it, we are in this vessel, this body.
Right.
Okay. Law of conservation of energy says that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, only changes forms.
Right.
So, okay, if we were to take that and extrapolate further, whatever we are, that spark, that soul, that whatever it is that makes us survives. We go to a higher plane, another plane of existence, which is adjacent to ours, but isn't this physical. Now, spirits, a lot of times, will get trapped. And it's not like necessarily in the movies that, they've done something wrong and they're going to... There's also free will. There's choice. Some of them choose, I can't go on. I fear of judgment. I can't face what I've done in this life, so I'm going to stay here. And extended time on this plane, sometimes if you do this, imagine you were in this room for the rest of your existence, you'd probably start to go a little batty, huh? That happens. It's very hard to separate the Hollywood paranormal from the actual paranormal. And in some ways, I feel like the actual paranormal is a lot scarier, but not as visual.
I agree with that. So along those same lines about mentioning spirits, you hear a lot in this field about people assisting spirits in crossing over, or even forcing them out of a location if there's a person who is scared of the activity in their home or their building. Do you believe, again, we're talking about beliefs,
of course,
that someone who is living has that ability to force a spirit out or assist them in going to the afterlife?
I used to not think so. I used to feel like, who are we? Well, first of all, who are you to say that that spirit has to go? Maybe that spirit is exactly where it needs to be at that time. There's a grand plan. Maybe, who are we to mess with essentially what is nature? And I know a lot of it is hubris, a lot of it is human ego saying, I'm going to cast the spirit out. I'm going to rescue the spirits. What are you rescuing, really?
Exactly.
Really? But I've seen cases and I've seen instances where, like, yeah, this happens. I've been present when spirit dissipates.
Right.
I have no explanation for it. I have no words for it, so I have to take it on faith that, yeah, even though it's not for everyone, and not every black T-shirt clad group can or should do it, there are those that do, and those that must,
okay.
Just to keep that natural order.
Okay. And, another subject that's sort of more mainstream now is demons. Lots of people claim there's TV shows about demonic activity, paranormal shows about demonic activity. Do you believe in demons, and have you ever experienced anything demonic?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
I do believe. Again, I was raised Catholic, so that terminology is ingrained in me very, very deeply. And even through my skeptical days, this is something that resonated. Now, I'll take you back to the Grand Midway Hotel.
Right.
This was the one and only case that I ever participated in that I feel we encountered something demonic.
Okay.
Or if I don't, we don't want to use that word, definitely malevolent, inhuman, negative.
Okay.
And it tapped directly into those old beliefs, into the core of how I was raised. And again, to say the word demon,
right.
It's very Hollywood now. It's very, all the paranormal shows on TV are like, we're going to fight a demon.
Everybody's got a demon now.
You're not.
Right.
I've only done one case. And after that case, me rocking back and forth, the rest of us shell-shocked to the point where my buddy Chris Mancuso on my team, he started wearing a cross. And the reason for this is that if there's evil, then there must be good, and you have to pick a side. And this case, this moment, was pivotal for a lot of different things. Like, this definitely was a turning point, because it's very easy to think that we're in control,
right,
and that we have the answers to everything. There are things out there that predate us, that are older than us, that we can't understand, that we can't even comprehend.
We don't know everything, yeah.
And we can only communicate. I can only explain to you,
right,
with my limited, caveman brain about what we've seen in the language of our past experience. I can't describe to you something that I can't comprehend, because there's no words to experience it. And I feel like with hauntings, that's the case for a lot of us. It comes down to feeling and emotion, and it's very hard for me to give that to you until you experience it yourself, and vice versa. Which is why,
along those same lines, do you ever feel like you've had an attachment? And you've been to a lot of places. Mm-hmm. Do you ever feel like something came home with you?
Consciously, no. But unconsciously, maybe.
Okay.
I've had a lot of people in the field say, yeah, you've got an attachment. Or I'm feeling some negative energy on you. I'm like, oh really? Okay. But these days, to use the old adage, there's no atheists and foxholes. I bring protection with me.
Okay.
And I don't talk about what it is or how I protect myself, but again, it goes back to intent. I'm trying to protect myself against those things that are trying to affect me, and it's not always spirits. Sometimes it's people. Sometimes it's their energy coming towards you, and it's funny to start this segment off with my time on Scared on Staten Island, because if 2002 Brian and 2016 Brian ever met,
oh, I can imagine.
The fact that I'm sitting on here talking to you about energy and intent and all this stuff, 2002 Brian would be like, you're crazy.
I can imagine. Let's talk about the game Three Pillars.
Okay.
You created this game with a member of Scared, Chris
Mancuso.
Okay. Could you give us just a summary of the game and what was behind the creation of the game? And
okay. Well, I mean, as you've seen with our documentaries, with everything we've done, I always like to have a creative aspect to it. We're all creative people. I mean, you're a host of a show. You're creating your own entity. You're bringing something into existence, and I love doing things like that. I've always been a gamer. Back in the day when Chris and I were younger, we would play D&D. We always played board games and card games. So I figured, you know what? Love of the paranormal, love of games. Let me merge them together.
Okay, so if you had to describe this sort of briefly to the paranormal enthusiasts, because I know this is very popular with us in the field, people in the field and enthusiasts, what would you say the game itself is about in a nutshell?
The Three Pillars, a paranormal card game, is essentially a investigation simulator. Two teams looking to investigate haunted places and the calamities that naturally happen to us. Battery drain, broken equipment, possession, things that stop us, we have to overcome in order to close the cases.
Okay, so there are different locations, right, in the game. What are the Three Pillars?
The Three Pillars actually is a reference to how we built our paranormal team, Scared. Three Pillars are psychic, skeptic, scientist. Three different viewpoints to make a more well-rounded investigation. And from the points probably just prior to the Grand Midway, we started utilizing that because we figured any one viewpoint alone skews how you see it. It's all perspective. So if we have three different perspectives, we come closer to truth. It's almost like the government, three different branches of government, so that no one has all the power. So the Three Pillars is a direct reference to that. And in the game, you have the scientist, the skeptic, and the psychic all operating on their cases.
How long has the game been out now?
It's been out for, let's say, a little over 2 years.
And it's available at?
NeverStopSearching.com.
Now, Scared, I've watched a few of the documentaries. Is that the perspective that your team would take during an investigation, the Three Pillars type of technique when investigating?
Yes, Three Pillar system I've actually integrated into everything I've been doing since its inception. There was actually something that happened on October 1st, 2016, called National Ghost Hunting Day.
Right, that's right.
And on that day, we did the world's largest ghost hunt.
Okay.
It was 70 teams.
Wow.
Across 5 different countries, across 4 different continents. And I insisted, I said, look, this is an experiment we're going to be doing. We have to implement the Three Pillar system so that we have a common ground for us to compare our evidence. And I'm still compiling that data, but it's been pretty amazing so far.
The experiment itself was to have multiple teams across
It was a
the
global,
country.
Simultaneous investigation. Now, being in the paranormal for as long as you and I have been, we know every weekend there's something going on somewhere. Right. There's a team gearing up for their first investigation. There's a paranormal event fundraiser going on somewhere else. There's another place that's running tours. And we're all concurrently yet separately going about all this stuff every weekend.
Right.
I said, you know what? Let's do it together. Let's do it as one unit. For that one day, for 2 hours, we are one team with one goal in mind. And I called it the Bridge. Now, the Bridge experiment was designed, now this is based on rudimentary the school experiments, the experiments which involve the time stream group. Look it up. Research for later.
Right.
I wanted everyone involved in this on the planet to ask the same questions.
Oh, wow, so it was sort of mass communication to the spirit world.
And I figured if all our intents were at the same, we were all together at the same time, asking the same questions, maybe we can raise our vibrations enough to make a better communication, almost like tuning that radio to the right station and get clearer communication. And so far, from the results we've been getting, interesting results.
Well, it was great having you here, Brian. I really appreciate you coming out. It's great to have you on the show. You appear at all of our expos and you support Woodbridge, and
looking forward to the next one.
What we're trying to do here. Thank you for watching this episode of New Jersey Paranormal. I'll see you next time.